and performers and youth data collectors. Wave your hands, gentlemen, to the One Love Symposium. This is the third night. It was originally scheduled February 17th, and we had a snow emergency, as many of you know, and we had to reschedule for tonight. So it's very exciting that we don't have all of the people that we had hoped to have, because when you change plans, there's COVID and you have children and very busy adults involved, everything can't work out always exactly the way you originally planned. But if we have learned one thing from this crazy period of time, it is flexibility, resiliency, being able to adapt. So, my name is Anna Gersh, and I'm the founder of the One Love Symposium. And I'd like to bring up my first most important group of partners, and that is the youth data collectors. Will you guys come up here? These folks. Some of us are very comfortable in front of a group, and some of us are not. We value all kinds of approaches to these ideas. First thing I want to say is that if you try to send this live stream, the original link was changed. It should be, if you go to that first link and it should redirect you, right?
If you go to the link, then in the comments, there's a direct link. You can click on that.
Okay. All right. So if somebody has any trouble, you can just let them know that they just have to try a little bit harder. So thank you so much for coming. Thanks to the performers and the panelists. Later on, after the performances, there's going to be a conversation around what makes great public service work. And we do hope you'll stay for that. We know most of you are here to see this fantastic group of performers that are coming up. But we do hope you'll stay and converse with us. I want to thank the performers and the panelists who are not here yet, and all who came to observe tonight. I'd like to also thank our most valued supporter and thought partner, Dr. Jennifer Pollard. Let's give her a big round of applause. Most of all, I want to thank the long-term commitment of our youth data collectors, without whom there would be no project at all. So let's give them one more big round. These guys are really important to this project. If you don't know about this project, I would encourage you to check out the website, onelovesymposium.com. Our goal, the goal of these gatherings, this is the third, now it was supposed to be the first, but now it's the third of 3 gatherings. We had one in Ann Arbor, one in Detroit, and now this one in Ypsilanti. A big part of this project is to bring all kinds of communities and people together to have a conversation about a topic of universal importance, and that is how do we want our public service workers to behave? There's lots of conversation about all the things that they do wrong, but one of the things that I've learned about these problem-prone professions is that they have developed some really good ways because of their problems, to manage difference in the world. And so part of this project is to learn from them, which we're doing in these conversations, about what their best practices are. We also want to include in this study some data that we have collected, community source data. So after the performances, we have some helpers from Ypsilanti High School. Can you ladies stand up so that everyone will recognize that? Shemaya Payne, thank you so much for coming. And they're going to bring around the survey. It's got a QR code. We definitely hope you will help us build our body of information. Sorry to keep you guys standing up here. We're going to go back to our part, but before, so you guys can go. Thank you so much for being up here. Oh, wait a second. Alex Koufopoulos, raise your hand. Elvin Sahadak, raise your hand. Jalen Wilson, number one, first data collector, God bless him. And Corey Daniel Jones, raise your hand. Yay! All right. Now, one of the critical pieces of gathering really meaningful community experience is the incorporation of the arts. And I'm so very grateful to Ms. Christy Bishop. Please let's give her a round. And she has brought a fantastic group of performers to start off our night, the One Love Symposium Youth Ensemble. And without further ado, I'll step away and let them do their thing.
This is the time we have, so this is the time. We must be ready to change the world around us. Yearning for change by waiting for leaders, hoping for fixing and toning for flaws in a functioning system designed to exclude us nothing. That's why it's a revolution. We ask for revolutionary change. God voices one love to change us. Now is the time we should be taking the time to listen, hearing ideas and issues around us. What do we miss when we judge and assume? What do we not understand from you? We're looking at what the messages might not understand. Get the space race. It's the space in our world most unexplored is that which lies between us. We ask for revolutionary change. God voices loud. One love to change us.
Henry? Here. Ayun? Here. Lalu? Here. Laura? Here. Malu? Sure. Noru? No.
I see you brought your attitude today. Naomi,
Here.
Quincy, here. Same, here. Camilla. All right, they're no longer with us. Will, here.
This is C. Where's Pamela?
Yeah, what do you mean they're no longer here?
Didn't you hear? The whole family's gone.
What? Gone? Class, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Camilla's family was removed and sent back to Ecuador. They can no longer stay with us, legally.
Oh no, I knew they got so worried about that. They were doing so well here. My best friend is gone. I hope I can see her again someday.
You know, that family did so much to help others. Let's name some ways they showed kindness and concern to others.
At this time, I am hoping that there is an audience member or two or three that wouldn't mind sharing what they thought of when you were given the form. The kind, considerate action done by someone outside the family. Would anyone care to share an idea? Possibly a perfect stranger who did something nice. Yes.
So it's not a perfect stranger, but your husband, my friend Andrew, sitting right here, sat with me in the ER for 3 hours this summer before I had my appendix out. I don't know if you could act out 3 hours of sitting around, but I was most appreciative. Still there.
Yes.
So I have on, my good friend Ken went all around town to all the musicians that he could think of to sign a card for me and to put together gifts, including CDs, the week that I was diagnosed with cancer in 2019. And I kept that card and others from before, like for birthdays and stuff, and I would take those to chemo and read them while I was waiting, or even like while traveling to the hospital. So it was very huge, and I reminded him lately about that. It meant a lot.
Any other thoughts? Something kind and considerate, not expected from someone in your life. Yes.
When I got injured a couple summers ago, the Plymouth girls cross country team made me like a bag of gifts and a card. That was like a get well soon card.
Once in our years early in our marriage, we were tight with money, and we walked to the grocery store to save money on gas. And on the way there, we checked everyone's recycling bins for any returnables that might give us an extra 10 cents here or there. We laughed on our way there, thinking, this is our story. This is the beginning of our life story. It'll only get better from here on out. Well, we got up to the counter with our food, and we were at about $1.50 short. We had toilet paper, bread, milk, I mean, nothing that could really be put back, except for some lunch meat. So it's like, all right, put the lunch meat away. And the guy, total stranger behind us, said, oh, for goodness sakes, here's some money to finish paying for your groceries. So that's the one that I think of with great joy. Okay.
I never realized what a loss would be to all of us. Everyone makes a difference. We will miss them. They belong here in our community.
How do we keep this from happening ever again? Should we be worried about our other friends? Who else is illegal here?
Look at me. My family may be from Ecuador, but that doesn't mean we're at a risk of being deported. It hurts to have you all assume that.
I like what Nora said. Everyone makes a difference. We all belong.
I hope you'll hear me as I sing this song. You need to feel in your heart to belong. We'll hold each other up in rising tides. Please know there's always friends like me on your side. Oh, we're sing song. You feel heart belong. All the right stars, your friends are on your side. I hope you'll hear me as I sing this song. You need to feel in your heart you belong. We'll hold each other up in rising tides. Please know there's always just like me on plates and forks. Ooh, pie! Can I have some? Sure. Let's all have it. Why not? Did you see the headlines today? Yeah, this guy is angry because a judge ruled in favor of anti-discrimination. Yeah, I don't get it. Why does something end up upsetting people anyway? No kidding. It's not good news for some, means bad news for others. It's not pie! What's the point of limiting options? What's the point of limiting friends? What's the point of refusing equality? Opportunity? It's not pie. God shouldn't hold you back, your section should stop you. Who you are should never be a stumbling block. What's the point of holding your grudges? What's the reason for fighting that fight? Letting everyone reap the benefits of fairness doesn't mean your benefits are smaller. Why? It's not pie! Hanging by a hair. What's the point of limiting options? What's the point of limiting friends? What's the point of refusing equality? Opportunity? It's not pie. Justice? It's not pie. Race shouldn't hold you back, your sex shouldn't stop you. Who you are should never be a stumbling block. What's the point of holding your grudges? What's the reason for fighting that fight? Letting everyone reap the benefits of fairness doesn't mean your benefits are smaller. Why? It's not pie!
Diversity is a fact.
Equity is a choice. Inclusion is an action.
Belonging is the feeling. The definition of diversity is the condition of having or being composed of differing elements. Variety.
Webster's dictionary defines equity as justice according to natural law or right, specifically freedom from bias or favoritism. Webster's dictionary defines inclusion as the act or practice of being included and accommodated. People who have historically been accommodating people who have historically been excluded, as because of their race, gender, sexuality, or ability.
And the same dictionary defines belonging as being in a close or intimate relationship. But I like this one more. Oxford Dictionary says belonging is the feeling of being comfortable and happy in a particular situation with a particular group of people. By far, this definition is my favorite. Wikipedia's definition is the human emotional need to be an accepted member of a group, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, religion, or something else. Some people tend to have an inherent desire to belong and be an important part of something greater than themselves.
Reach out to you, please take my hand. If I speak up for you, please understand. My voice might quiver, my hands might shake. My knees might not go from the weight. My responsibility to insist on change. But don't confuse my shaking self or anything but absolute passion. I'm just not used to using my power. Please take my hand, we're stronger together. One heart. inside your heart, what would I find?
Are you sure you're always clearly in the right?
Do you read the headlines and feel heartache and all the hatred, poverty, and flight?
Well, guess what? Big deal. You're not an ally till your boots hit the ground.
What would an ally do? What difference do you make? Sorry, sir, your thoughts and prayers don't have proof of that thing. What would an ally do? What is it that you stand for? Sorry, Mr. Standing has not raised a hand for being an ally. Here's what that looks like. Bearing witness, speaking truth to power.
Amplify voices.
Others who fight to be heard.
Give us the chance to explain how coffee is served.
No one cares
Who learns to trust if your intentions are only discussed in your head? You're not an ally. Yes.
Grab the pen, read the book, do the work. Ask the question. Hold the hand.
From the cause. And confront the status quo.
Vote the vote. Share the news. Seek out leaders. Witness art. Dig down deep.
Watch yourself. Stop going with the flow. No one cares or learns to trust if your intentions are only discussed. Put your boots on and be an ally.
Thanks for listening to us tonight. We are the next generation, and we're counting on you. These are revolutionary times.
This is the time we have, so this is the time. We must be ready to change the world around us. Waiting for change by waiting for leaders, hoping for fixing and toning for flaws in our lives, systems designed to exclude as nothing. That's why it's a revolution. We ask for revolutionary change. God, voices love to change us. Now is the time, you should be taking the time to listen, hear ideas and issues around us. What do we anticipate and we assume? What do we not understand when we overlook problems and resistance like I overwhelm the effort?
Forget the space race. The space in our world most unexplored is that which lies between us.
Revolution. We ask for revolutionary change. Lord, voices one love to change us.
At this time, we would like to sing one more song for you, but we want you to join with us. It's at the bottom of the paper that we handed out at the beginning. Do you think it's easy enough? And it might get stuck in your ear as you leave here today.
I hope you'll hear me as I sing this song. You need to feel in your heart you belong. We'll hold each other up in rising tides. Please know there's always friends like me on your side.
One more time.
Oh, here's this song. You feel right along. Hold on, rising tides. Please know there's always friends like me on your side.
Wow, was that beautiful? Was that such a great This is the kind of stuff we really need kids to be learning and talking about, right? Yeah. I mean, this is, yes.
I just wanted to share that the One Love Ensemble group is actually quite a lot bigger than this. There are members of our group who helped us come up with the ideas that we wanted to do and the words for the songs. Everything that we did here tonight was completely original and completely with all of the kids' input. Many of the kids who volunteered to help me create this performance were interested in the creation of it, but not so much in the performance part. And I thought that was lovely that they would be able to contribute as well. So it really was a very big team effort. Thanks.
There have been quite a few original documents contributed to this effort. We hope to finish a One Love Symposium anthology of universal human values. We have several submissions. You can check out some of them that are on our display that are to the side in the front of the room. But we have another original artist who's come here tonight to share his original work with us. I want to bring up Malik Henry, a poet and activist. He does a lot of work with Staying Power. If you're familiar with that group in Ypsilanti, their interest is housing justice in Washtenaw County. Malik is a talented and community-driven poet, an artist and musician born in Detroit. He actively works in his community, continuing to combat injustices and to create open spaces for genuine communication and growth. Please give a warm welcome to Malik Henry.
Thank you. That's crazy. That performance skills of the children, their performance skills are much better than mine. So bear with me. I was trying to get my performance pieces printed. I was struggling to do so we're gonna read it off my phone. That's fine too.
Malik, I printed them. Do you want them?
Oh, you did? Okay, thank you. That's okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Malik's piece is right here. We gotta put them back on the display though.
Yeah. I'll be reading a short collection of pieces I wrote specifically for this. I'll try to project. I'm sorry, it's like distance as well. Cold cement, creaking crickets, craving, calling, colliding chatter, all directed towards the bustling shop. Attention all but focused on me. Even the birds don't fly away when I'm near. Nothing talks to me, notices me, but my stomach. Now less of a growl and more so than a belch, a yearning, a shriek, frown from a deep of me, the depth, the hunger, so profound, I feel it at every step. Oh, what a hunger. A noise so loud makes me forget the sounds of sirens. So numbing it drowns the sound of still earth laying upon pavement because park benches aren't good anymore. Ringing like a dial tone, I try to answer, but my ears are up here and my hands are responding at my stomach, rearing an end, a soothe, a song. It's not here and it's not coming. It stills for now. Just as hazy, someone I do not know reminds me it is not as blinding as I thought, not as blinding as blue, as red, as white flashes in my eyes. It's strong enough to pull me present, corner of a corner store, west enough to see the water tower, late enough to be dark in the day, dark enough for me to only see his hands behind the lights, old enough to know I don't know who this is, enough to see the flashing car to my left, enough to know this is the part where I don't move, right enough to know to listen. Been here long enough to know that sometimes it's never enough, hungry enough to want to keep walking, enough to clutch my core again, so hungry I could go. enough that I could let my hands down even for a moment, a second, to soothe, to bear, to sing a song of full stomachs and a full house, a song I long for again, that was one piece. Yeah, yeah, right. I'll say what I said. This one has a small, I wouldn't say it's exactly triggering, but it does involve subjects about fear in this poem. It's not descriptive or anything. A student is sleeping in my class again. I don't know how many times I have to reiterate myself. If you do not want to come to class, don't. This education is for you. I already have my degree. If you do not want what I have to offer, then don't come. I asked them to see me at the end of the day. They have a couple of missing assignments, and once the bell rings, they're usually first out the door. Let's try not to do that. A few absences and overdue assignments, something has to change. It's time for dismissal. All the students gleefully exit the building. One dashes to the hallway, meets me at my door, excessively apologizes for being late. That's okay. We enter my room again and I offer a seat. They decline, say no. They have no time to sit. I assume they have no time to beat around the bush either. I ask them about the last 3 homework assignments. Where are they? Did you know they were due? They respond, yes. They know that they are late. They say they've spoken to the counselor. They said to get them in before the end of the week. It'll be fine. It's not up to them. It's up to me. And I said it's overdue. Harshly said, not something to say to a student. I apologize, but they apologize in my stead. They have to go. They run along before I say my goodbyes. I move along to the counselor's office. I need to see if there's more to this. I smile and wave amongst faculty, staff, stack papers and student cases. I meet them at the desk, find the name, found the stack, a lot more at home. The one child was easily old. And sleepless nights was way more trapping than beatings and drinkings might be the reason for the absences. It's easier to not be here than be here, and more in pain, a lot less to explain. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Think of me, speak of me, talk about me, lose empathy, enemy, be discreet, not an entity, we, the people. Avoid abusing your size, you don't know me, you're assuming things, a child. Sorry, skip that part. And all that you cared about was a piece of paper that was due. The father's present, but his mind is to his children, second to beers and sleep. After a shift, I wander endlessly. It's nowhere to go and nowhere to be. The only perks of being homeless, except there's nowhere to eat, nowhere to sleep, nothing to own, and no space to keep. It's not a life to hold when your body is cold. I did everything right, and it wasn't enough. Only if you knew how to deal with truth, how to let it go, how to speak with youth, how to take a second, a moment, talk to me, get to know me. Don't talk like you know me, you don't know me. And if it'll be cool with you, I'd love to be done and through. You can't understand me, and that's fine. It's not your job, but it should be. If it was you, you'd love a little understanding, maybe a little empathy. I can't be you. I don't have the time. A condescending look from someone who was reading a chart. A gaze follows every question as if there's a wrong answer. I thought there were no wrong answers. We're supposed to be level here. You're a doctor. Everybody goes to the doctor. Everybody looks at everybody, but it feels like you see what you want to see. Shifting and fidgeting through uncomfortable conversations. I've already explained. I don't want to be like this, and I don't want this for anyone. Thank you.
I want to just point out, like, this is kind of so many changes happened in the scheduling of these events. I don't know if you noticed Malik editing his piece, because perhaps he did not really realize this was going to be an event full of children. Is that about right? Yeah, so thank you for your artistic discretion. Thank you. Let's hear it. At the beginning of this, I talked about resiliency, adaptation, adaptability. This is a project that has been going on for more than 2 years. We have had 3 large events. It has involved bringing people from these 3 target professions in education, healthcare, and law enforcement together to talk about public service work. A critical conversation that we tend to only have in really disparaging ways, in frustration at these professions that are, they're everywhere. Everybody needs a public service worker. Everybody will need, so beautifully incorporated in your work. He spent all this time on the website, and just like so much of the content of this work was infused in his work. And I wish you all knew how deep and awesome that was. Just one more round of applause. And we will continue this. I'm going to just move this program along, but thank you so much. One more time, Malik. So I'm going to read a little bit of an introduction. We've got some of our panelists are already here. Some of them won't be making it. We hope that you'll stay, but if you don't, check out the live stream. Please follow this work. There's a lot happening with it. All right. The goal of these gatherings is to bring together interested community members and subject area specialists to consider the necessary skills and knowledge for really good public service. We'd like to use this information as the foundation, the information that we collect. Ladies, get whoever you can, get them to take this survey. You got to grab them before they leave. Yeah, if they will. Thank you very much. Please take the survey. You are contributing to an important body of information. We'd like to use this information to as the foundation for a professional learning curriculum and certification opportunity called the Human Services Professional. This certification would be useful for anyone for whom one-on-one communication is a big part of their job, because the certification is all about developing a set of best practices for meeting people who are different than you. This certification has 4 basic informational components. The best practices that we are borrowing and learning from these problem-prone professions. They are healthcare, education, and law enforcement, and they have much to teach us about dealing with people. We often talk about the problems in these fields, the things they do wrong, but the goal of the One Love Symposium project is to bring experts from these fields together to discuss what they're doing well and which of these practices we can share with other public service workers. We also want to include... I said, but the goal of the One Love Symposium project is to bring experts from these fields together to discuss what they're doing well and which of these practices we can share with other public service workers. We also want to include a component about the need to be aware of one's service area, who you're serving. We're calling this regional awareness. But you may have also heard of place-based education, which operates from the same foundational idea. Knowing who you serve is an essential part of doing high-quality public service work. A third component is being clear about what public service means. Human services professionals will have a clearly defined set of shared values about how we treat people and how we meet those who are different than us. Finally, and perhaps the most important feature of this curriculum, will be the community source knowledge we've gathered and continue to gather to inform this work. We started with a survey, one we hope everyone will take tonight. And we also hope to include focus groups. And most recently, we've been given an opportunity to develop and pilot a human services professional course that we hope to launch through Michigan Works and Washtenaw Community College by summer term. This course will be co-created and co-taught with the youth data collectors. Your response to our survey will help build this course. One question I get asked a lot about this project is why the name? Why One Love? The name expresses a coming together across difference. Just as the goal is unity of public service purpose, we have made coming together across difference the theme of all we've done in this project. We've held events in 3 different districts. Our meetings have incorporated multiple ways of examining the problem. Our events showcase a variety of performance types. Tonight, you got to see a bunch of kids. If you had been at the Detroit show on February 18th, you would have seen a great jazz performance and some comedy and poetry. We've also a variety of performance types, and our guests and program supporters represent an expansive collection of expertise, interests, and locations. Among our direct supporters, we can count 11 Michigan cities, 7 states, and 3 countries. Our small but intentionally diverse group of youth data collectors allowed us opportunities for regular consideration of opposing perspectives. Yeah, for real. This has given us a lot of practice reminding ourselves of the things we have in common. This is where universal values comes in. You can see around the room, over here, around this corner, we have some displays from area students who have written about universal human values. We believe any effective approach to helping people, which is the goal of all public service work, should be grounded in universal human values. And there are actually quite a few of these. And for more information, if you're interested in universal human values, I would direct you to the World Values Survey, a survey that started at the University of Michigan, an international survey, and it's been going on since 1981. They have hundreds of thousands of responses on cultural values around the world, and it is the ideas around which this effort has been based. This group of youth data collectors came together in May of 2021 around the idea of building a shared knowledge base to inform more equitable decision-making for public service workers. In bringing together this group, I went to many out-of-school time programs and asked the question, what do public service workers need to know to be good at their jobs? Through this process, I met all but one of the youth data collectors. One was already living with me. And we've been meeting and planning this work since then. Now I'd like to introduce the very first youth data collector and critical collaborator in this work, Mr. Jalen Wilson. All right, tell me about it. You gotta stand in front of that. You want to sit?
Okay. How's everybody doing today? Okay, so I have a whole script for y'all. It's just for all the OGs that are still here. I appreciate y'all. First off, hello. My name is Jalen Wilson. I am a student at Arbor Preparatory School and a youth data collector. And with me and my friend Corey, come here, precious. And what me and my friend Corey here are going to be talking to you about is the background damage that human resources or human interactions by itself have made in our society, and how it carries into our present day and time. And instead of us as civilized people coming together and working our past differences, we let it turn into a negative cycle that becomes worse over time. But I believe that we can use the past as a learning experience to better our now, and this is how.
Howdy. I wanted to do a little segue to that. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I got too scared. I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Corey DJ. Nice to meet you all. Also, that was fantastic day, Weezy.
Yes, it was.
Let's do it.
Okay. Oh, my name is Corey Daniels Jones. I'm from Ypsilanti High School. I'm currently 17 years old. Oh, and I love to fix things. This
That
my
was
little
so
thing.
random.
I've come to talk about some things I've noticed growing up. We need to make a big change in our community. No, scratch that. We need to make a big change in our system because our system is failing. We're currently losing officers, fast food workers, losing doctors because of disrespect we're either receiving or dishing out. I know some people will walk up into a fast food chain and say, "Hey, can I get a Big Mac?" But somehow we end up getting an attitude from that. So what do? We did nothing. Just because they're having a bad day, why should we, the people, have to suffer from that? I mean, I know myself. I work at a fast food. I used to work at a fast food chain. I worked at McDonald's down on Washington. I worked there and Popeyes down on Ellsworth. Oh, I've been cussed out so many times, and you know what? I found it funny because some of the things, it wasn't our fault. But hey, don't get into this one. When I was a kid, I looked up to officers because they put their lives on the line to keep us safe. They were cynical that everything would be okay, but now I can't even look them in the face without thinking I'm going to be shot in place. Most officers are put in heated situations and mistake regular everyday objects as a tool to cause harm. It may look like a brush or a comb, but it could be a dagger or a gun. I'm not defending or accusing. I just want to put this out there. Our system is so failing. It's estimated that 18 to 24% of dispatchers and 35% of police officers suffer from PTSD. Many first responders self-medicate with alcohol, self-destructive, and abusive behaviors in an effort to cope with their stress and trauma they deal with daily. Which, again, I'm not defending nor accusing. Hey, I pay attention to news, and that's messed up. I'm sorry for everybody who's lost somebody due to police misconduct. I'm sorry. I walked into hospitals, watched as patients blaming doctors for things that's out of their hands, it's out of their control. Right that one. Yeah. I'm sorry, I keep stopping and pausing. All right.
Keep going. Nobody knows but you.
Honestly, we just need to make a change. That's why I ended up joining up with One Love Symposium. In fact, I think 5-6 months ago.
Yeah, so it's been a while now.
Yeah. I was sitting at the park with this guy. Sitting at the park, just chilling, trying to sharpen a stick. I don't know why. I just got interested, and he introduced me to the program. I was like, for real, huh? I joined up. Said, all right, day one. Meeting was outside. It was cold, but fun. Especially the day she ended up bringing some muffins. Very interesting day. Very much so. I remember I was limping that day. I can't get that out of my head. I feel a kick at this guy. Ugh. But hey, I can't spend time like that anymore because our world is literally changing every single day. The weather's getting hotter and hotter. Bugs are going extinct. I mean, have you ever walked outside and just start running or riding a bike and it's just a bug will fly in your mouth? Like at one time you open your mouth, just it's just right there. But yet somehow we're not doing anything. We're not all doing something about it. We're still sitting there or watching as it happens, or we don't have enough information on how to make a change for this. That's why I joined up with some Symposium.
unexpected.
Oh, very good. All right.
Before I start, I just want to say,
That's my friend Corey.
so, and what my friend Corey just expressed is only one person's perspective on how millions of different people feel about the actions of human interactions. How we treat each other just as people alone, I feel that the hate, aggression, or just carelessness we show to each other carries on through different generations and becomes worse as it advances over time. I understand that it's hard to get people that know nothing about each other to come together and work on their differences. You know, like, it just creates segregation, which really sucks. But people make the segregation that people make. And I get it's draining and tiring to try to understand someone new, but the bond you could build after it is worth it. So if you truly want to see change, I want to let people know it all starts with you, to be honest. Everything you do has a huge impact on the world. And if you demonstrate what you want to see in the world, just in your neighborhood, you never know who you might inspire. And then you don't know who they might inspire. And then it just starts growing into the community, then it grows into the country. And then if it's that impactful, you never know, it could grow into the whole world. But change won't start if you don't want to get up and start it yourself. I'm done. Also, before I forget, I added a little part. Thank you. And I mean to all of you that stayed, forget the people that left. But to all of you that stayed, I really do appreciate you for giving me and my friend Corey and my whole group the opportunity to share with you guys. You guys have a good day.
Well, continuing on what Jalen just said about ways you can impact the world every day, a really easy way to start would just be by taking this survey, which RFCI helpers just handed out. This survey wasn't a full idea when we just started out. It was we just started with a question. That question was, what does a doctor, a police officer, or a teacher need to be good at their job? From there, we kind of branched out into three separate categories we wanted. Those were situational awareness, respect, and skills. In those individual categories, we came up with specific things that we wanted in there. For situational awareness, we have empathy is one of them. For respect, we have openness. For skills, we have listening. More items were added to the survey before we had the final step of working out some of the redundancies. For example, coming back to, we had open-mindedness and being impartial. Now it's just condensing down into having an open mind. We all kind of collected our data. We all collected our data in different ways. One of the first ways we started collecting data. One of the first ways we collected data was One of the first ways we started collecting our data was we started meeting at Frog Island, and we just went around and went up to people with a QR code, and we asked them to scan it with their phones, and hopefully they took it. And we got some survey responses that way. One way I personally did, I gave it to my history class. They all took it. That was very nice of them. Throughout the whole process, there was big emphasis on not collecting dirty data. That's data that's coerced or forced out of people. And when you do that, you get not what people really think. You get like a muddled version of what they think that's like clouded with their emotion of like trying to get you off their back at the moment. Once we had about 100 responses after that, we realized we needed to get we needed to find a better way to get more data. Some of our members of our group, including Alex, Jennifer, and my mom, went over to Pioneer and asked people to get some, to ask people to fill out the survey there. That got us a little bit more. Once we had, so a little bit more data, we went to a data analyst, Miss Leanne Roy, and she recommended we continue to expand our responses from there. We also talked to a computer scientist named Yelchin, who helped us prepare our survey by getting rid of the open-ended stuff. So maybe, we could scale this up to, if we get 10,000 responses and we have 10,000 open-ended, that's a lot of data to work through. Since then, we've been using these events that we've been putting on as data collection opportunities. We now have about 200 responses. Please take the survey handed out by our Ipsy High helpers. Have a good night.
Nice job, man. Good job, Elton.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm from Pioneer. I live in Ann Arbor. I've been there my entire life. I got into this project about a little under a year ago. Well, no, about half a year ago, because I wanted to make a difference. My entire life I've been sitting on the sidelines, doing sports, doing what every single other kid was doing. And I never made a difference. I never felt passionate about what I was doing until now, where I feel like I actually help people. Now, what I'm going to be doing with you today, I'm going to be sharing you guys what our findings from the survey are and how we are moving on with our survey. So, from a small group meeting in the park about every week or so, the great leaps we have taken, it has become a reality that the survey and this project is slowly taking steps in the right direction. As united as this group continues, we have more and more work that has to get done. But instead of slowing down, we are speeding up. As most of you know, our final goal is to create a certification that one receives for a course that eliminates bias in most jobs, especially those that require a human service professional. To reach our final goal, we need a few key steps. I'm here to share them with you. The first thing we need to do is we need to finish our data collection. So as Elvin said, we have Mr. Yeltsin, who created a really, really, really intricate survey that we'll be able to spread to thousands of people. This will help us get it out and get the responses that we really need to get an accurate image of what people believe would be important in this course. We've already discovered some wonderful things as well. And as time goes on, we will discover more things that honestly is pretty amazing. I mean, in our findings here, which I'll read off to you in just a minute, we discovered some pretty incredible findings. Moving on, we also want to plan a trip to Senior Center so we can pick the brains of the golden generation and try and understand what they think is best. They've had the most experience on this world, and I believe that they will help us continue what we're doing and honestly probably help us solve some of the problems that we're experiencing right now. There are not that many, trust me. We are also hoping to eliminate bias with the certification and get people a raise by doing so. So by taking the by taking the course, they can get a certification that hopefully when companies hire them, they'll be able to get a raise for doing this and make something that would be a normally unlivable wage, get a raise to something that will make it livable because they have that experience and they have that training with human services professionals. We also, every time there's large social change, we often see big changes to our society and often period of chaos falls. In this case, I'm talking about the mass media that sends shockwaves across our country pretty much daily. And this period of chaos that I think we're all experiencing right now and noticing is actually kind of normal in the general trend of things. But I believe that the One Love Symposium will create a pillar of stability that will hopefully spread to everyone else. And we will understand that it isn't just about ourselves and that it's about just, as the kid said, giving. It's not about pie, it's about sharing it. and giving it out to others and not keeping it all for ourselves.
Yes.
Thank you. And next we have our findings, which are actually kind of interesting. So as Alvin mentioned, we have about 200 responses so far. As time goes on, I'm hoping we'll be able to increase that to about, hopefully, as many as 10,000, if not more. Our first findings are stuff that we'll probably have to change in the future. First thing is, obviously, we need more people to take the survey. As our data sample right now is rather small, we want to be able to increase it and get more people out so we get a more accurate picture. After the first administration of the survey, we found that we needed more diversity, both in age and in race. We found that we had a lot of kids actually, so we wanted to get a lot more adults to take the survey and a far broader spectrum of ethnicities. We also found that 40% of youth ages 13 through 18 and 65% of adults 45 and older view that curiosity is actually an important part of what a service professional or public service worker needs to have in their mindset. As we continue, some of the next steps that we're going to want to do is we're going to have to continue to take more data, like I said, host focus groups, which I think will be pretty important, as this will allow us to gather even more data. And seeing as our survey does not have open-ended questions, this will allow us to talk person to person with people and get a more in-depth understanding of what they think is necessary. Final is to develop the human services professional program. So this is basically a pilot of what our ultimate goal is going to be, which is actually already in the works and will be coming pretty soon. This is something that anyone can take, which is the beauty of the whole thing. It isn't limited to one person. It can be, or one group of people or service professionals. Anyone who wants to take it for a cheap price, it's affordable and easy. And I think as time goes on, we will find that this becomes invaluable. Thank you.
Wow, hey, all right, okay, so we are we just need to move these tables up, just give us a couple of minutes, we're gonna get our panel up here. Thank you so much, you young youth data collectors, you guys so nailed it. Yep. Gentlemen, come on up, whenever you're ready.
Spread ourselves.
Spread yourself out wherever you're comfortable.
You don't need me now.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay.
No, this is gonna be great. All right. I'm going to introduce our panel here. We have, let me let them get settled. Hold on. Perfect. Yep. Fantastic. All right. Okay. Yep. Yep. All right. This is so exciting. This is my favorite part, the conversations about it. And you can tell by how articulate these young data collectors are about this project, because we spend a lot of time really thinking deeply about the concept of the human services professional. Our belief is that there are some common factors about how we want to be treated, and that these are things we can train to. Let me introduce our panel. I'm sorry, I have to, do you guys have to get to staying power? Yeah. So go ahead and take it. we're losing some of our people because these young people that are involved in this project are so talented and engaged that they can't stay for the panel, which is totally fine. Thank you so much for coming. Let's give our Maya and Malik a big round of applause. Thank you so much for coming and helping me out and being here. I am just all right. I forgot to stop at the bank. I'm paying all these kids who came to help, and I had so much to do. I completely forgot it, but I'm good for it. Okay. Yes.
I know her.
All right. Get out of the way. Okay, I have another question from the audience that is private, but I have to wait because I'm introducing our panel. All right, let me start on my absolute right here. Chief Mike Liege, the Chief of Police of Eastern Michigan University Police Department. Commander of Police Services at Washington County Sheriff's Department, Keith Flores. Ms. Jennifer Pollard, recently Dr. Jennifer Pollard in higher education. Pam Bilsma, nurse at Hematology Oncology at Mott Children's Hospital. And Daryl Johnson, Executive Director of Mentor to Youth, pastor, amazing guy. Welcome, and thank you all so much for coming tonight. I'm going to take their questions, and then I'm going to ask you. We're gonna jump right into it. The panel discussions are kind of like they're brand new, that I'm holding them just because this project is so important. So we're a little bit rocky, but we're getting there. The questions are good, and everyone's had a chance to look at them. I'm gonna get out of the way so you can see people talk. I'm gonna announce the first question. Let me ask it to the group. Our preliminary findings indicated approximately 65% of respondents 45 years and older, and an average of 40% of younger respondents ages 13 to 18 selected curiosity as a necessary disposition or skill of a public service worker. How does your workplace foster curiosity or a curious mindset in your professional learning opportunities? I know that that's weird to just ask 5 people at once, so would anyone like to start?
Well, let me just tell you, EMU.
Yes.
This is a very good question. And let me just say, I have 7 months on EMU, so I can't say that I'm the new chief too much longer, but I'm gonna ride that way for a little bit longer. But aside from the 7 months, I've got 28 years and change of law enforcement experience in Washington County. And it's been here since day one, and I'm drawn to it. I can't help it. The diversity, the creativity, even the challenges keeps me here and keeps me focused on what it is I can do now to make EMU a safe community for all of my students and staff and visitors. That's of paramount importance to me. The idea of curiosity of staff, developing staff, keeping them engaged, wanting them to work hard every single day to make sure that our platform is the best platform it can be, involves that element of curiosity. For me, when I saw this question, I've never considered how do I recruit, how do I develop, how do I create circumstances to recognize curiosity in the law enforcement profession. And the best thing that I can come up with is really, it's creating an environment where there's constant development. Development through diversity, inclusion, and equity, development towards refining skill set, development towards productive engagement of my community, and establishing a set of expectations in my office that curiosity promotes transparency, it promotes accountability, it promotes that engagement, It is very important for my office. The students and staff at EMU, they have loud voices when they want to be heard. And I appreciate that, and I want to hear those voices as well. So getting my group involved, getting them training, getting them opportunities to grow intrinsically, hopefully they will keep their curiosity sparked, and it will continue on a good pattern of making sure we're engaged in our community as much as possible.
Thank you so much. I love how you talk about diversity, creating a diverse environment and creating opportunities for training, keeps the mind active, and that fosters curiosity. Are there other things that the panel would suggest? Other opportunities? Yes, sir.
I'll jump in from a reverse angle in that, like, I'm not very curious. And working with a coach, about running our organization and coming into some, bumping heads with people, right, as I'm trying to lead them. And she explained to me that sometimes you aren't curious in your response about their point of view, right? And the reason I'm not curious is because I already know everything. Right, so you can see the problem with that, right? And as a leader, I have to come to the table every morning and fight myself and be curious about what you know, right? And so then I open up a world that's really collaborative as opposed to just doing things the way I think they should be done. And mind you, I think my ways are wonderful and marvelous and would change the world. But the reality is we need other people, right? And I thought about this when we see this question. I thought about how hard it would be for policemen to really walk into a situation and be curious when they need to establish control in situations. Right? And I've always said, to give y'all kudos, in that you don't want me to be the police. Because when I show up, I'm going home. Right? And so in these difficult situations, when you ask a big question like that, right? And I find that at 59 years old, this being curious challenges everything in me. Right? I'll give you an example. My daughter's 15 and she's at Eastern in the EAC program, whatever. She asked me to take her to school one morning over to Huron. And I'm like, why are you going over to Huron? Well, that ain't what I said. Yeah, I did say, why are you going over to Huron? She told me when I dropped out and he said, and I instantly lost it. All right, what do you mean? You ain't checked with me, da. And so, I was talking to my coach and she said, there was a perfect opportunity to be curious. All right, what's going on with you? What's happening? Right? But again, because I have a vision of life, and she's only 15, and this program is going to do this much for you, I instantly jump in with I do better. So that's what curious me.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, what do you think about that, Commander Flores?
I love what he said because I think especially when you get into positions of leadership, you've attained, so to speak. So you've gotten to where you are and you feel like you've gotten there because for a reason, right? There's that trust, there's that loyalty, there's that drive, there's that, the transparency of getting to that certain position. So you feel like you know most everything, but you really have to be curious. You have to listen to different points of view. You have to be more transparent, not less transparent. You have to be more open to suggestions because we can close that off and kind of get in our own box. But there's so many other boxes out there that we can open up and will reveal things to us that that really open up the world, really. And if we don't, we become closed-minded. We close our box off. So I love that because that is so true.
I'll tell my coach.
It's a Kansas City Chiefs. That's what I'm looking at. Why I'm curious why you're a KC fan. That's what I'm trying to do.
Born and raised.
Well, I imagine curiosity is an essential feature in healthcare, especially when you do direct patient care.
All right, I have to take this off all the time. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going 10 ways with this. So for starters, I have to push back a little, and I've talked to you about this several times, on the initial premise where it points out doctors and leaves out nurses. Because for one thing, I think that nursing is inherently a profession that has more curiosity than, you know, what, in a sense. I think that nursing is a profession that is built on being more holistic by nature. And also though healthcare done well, in my opinion, has a lot of collaboration, which also requires curiosity. And I think that where I am, which is pediatrics, tends to be strong in that overall. Again, done well and ideally. And I think that it's, if you can stop, take a breath, and put yourself aside, and sometimes even if you don't, the kids will put you back there. Even if you're sort of come in and you're not having a great day or whatever's going on, the kids will put you back to curious, whether you want to be there or not, because that's the beauty of taking care of kids. People say, oh, I couldn't take care of kids because it's so sad or this or that, and that is not where kids are, whether they have cancer or anything else. They want to go ride the big wheels in the hall, they want to have a water gun fight, they want to, and you have to be able to meet them there, like it or not. That is the only way you can survive taking care of kids. So, and also as I listen to you guys, I suspect that I'm in the least leaderly position of anyone up here, in that I'm really just a foot soldier. I'm one of many people doing my job. And that's not a dish, that's just, it is. And so, I am not in a position where I really think I know anything. I mean, really, in an institutional sense.
Does your profession institutionalize creating opportunities around professional learning to build curiosity? Is it something people even talk about?
Not per se, but there is, so like we have a shadowing program where residents will shadow nurses for part of the day, and then we shadow with the same resident, you know, so that we're doing like learning each other's jobs, which I think is pretty, yeah, I think that's fabulous. And I think it does foster curiosity. And also, a lot of the time, they just, by getting out of the way, management fosters curiosity. So it's pretty unique in that so much of our time professionally is one-on-one in a room with a kid or a family, that, you know, we could be great or terrible and nobody really knows. And so it's a lot of faith in, because it's really literally one-on-one or one nurse with one family. And unless somebody complains or brags, they don't know how we are. So it's going by your management and their, and I guess policing is a lot the same. It's the sense of management and how much faith they have in your character, and giving you the room to be creative and the room to sort of, I don't know, explore stuff without micromanaging, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting that I feel like we're talking about kind of talking around this idea of your brain being stimulated, you know, like you see something and it wakes you up, you expose yourself to training and, or different kinds of people, and it helps create a curious mindset. Is how in higher education is all about curiosity, right? I mean, it's kind of like the golden spot of curiosity. Everyone's allowed to be curious and encouraged to be curious. But how do they do it around, in the environment that you're in higher ed?
I mean, I think one of the big things for me was interdisciplinary panels. That was, I mean, on any conceivable topic, because there's an embarrassment of riches at University of Michigan, where I was a PhD student. And one of the things that I did, which not everybody really practices, some people stay within their own degree program, as opposed to, oh, there's something in the combined program in psych and education. Let's go over there, see what's happening. And they've also got social workers on the panel, that type of thing. Like once that was out there, I'm like, I'm there. And, you know, got so many great perspectives. But one of the things that I found troubling over time around DEI training is that it was just coming in a room and talking. And then the next thing you come in a room and talk, you know, some would be small group, some would be, you know, kind of larger discussion. But what I found was really powerful was this time when we decided that we were going to change one of our events, which was basically a welcome event for prospective students. But because of the way we changed it, it became much more, because actually it used to be a session where people would learn about the research opportunities they could take up at the University of Michigan. After all, that's why you're coming to be a grad student there. But when we changed that to have people share their narratives, so whether it was through poetry, which I often did, and song, both of those things. One of my friends who was in the combined program in psych and education, she did visual art one time, and I later found out the role that it played in her life in thinking about how school spaces ought to be redesigned to really foster the same very curiosity and learning. Nell Juke shared her narrative about, you know, her parents' openness. In fact, you know, she joked about how and she used humor as well. Nell is a specialist in literacy and really gives a lot to the community. So we got to see who people were in a whole sense. And I think it provoked additional curiosity. People wanted to know, oh, I didn't know this about you. So they wanted to know what more there is. And I think that helped to bring people who were kind of often on the margins of DEI discussions into a greater sense of curiosity, because it was a different modality being employed. And I've seen similarly, you know, watching faculty observe the Teaching and Learning Center theater group that really lifts up a lot of issues that happen in the classroom. And it's not like, you know, you're trying to sneak something past people, but you're trying to attend to the multiple portals for learning, you know? And so I think those needs really need to be employed a whole lot more than they are, rather than being siloed in sort of particular programs or particular units. I think it needs to become ubiquitous, you know, employing the arts and having people, just like we had today with Christie's group, the young poet. There's this kind of visceral response that happens that you can't really deny. You could kind of be appearing naive stuff in a talk shop, so to speak, but when the arts are employed, I feel like it kind of brings another level of challenge because it's physical, a physical registration. I mean, some people will deny that too, but I really think the arts are powerful.
I really appreciate everybody really giving
thoughtful answer about this, because I do think that it was an important finding. You know, like, you know, we only have 200 responses. This was our big finding. Everybody talks about curiosity. I think that it's, you know, when I hear you talk about training, when I hear you talk about the arts, these are things that stimulate the mind. I'll share with you one example of an out-of-school time program that did their way of developing a curious mindset. And there's new findings also now around awe, the idea that you see something bigger than yourself, being sort of correlated with having an openness and a curious mind. But this place in California called AHA, it was a out-of-school time program for really highly traumatized young women. And their professional learning was sending everybody to comedy club to do stand-up. They had to do open mic. And their rationale was that it put them in this situation where they were so unfamiliar that they had to like use all their resources to be able to just be up there and you know, just be up there, just be up there. Yeah. So, you know, I think that that's probably, that's an example of a profession that seems to have like, or a particular space that seems to have brought it home there. One of our other preliminary findings indicated the golden rule, or treat others how you'd like to be treated, was rated quite highly across the board, 75% of all race categories and 70% and higher in all age categories. To me, this seems like a morality question. How can public services train for morality? Do any public service jobs train for morality? Have you had that experience in your professional learning about having somebody trying to shape your attitudes outside of specific DEI instruction, which I think a lot of people are going to now? You know, it's the one thing that we're absolutely certain is a bad idea around morality, is that we look at each other and approach people who are different, and you know that we need to approach them with actually a curious mindset and not a fearful mindset. So we agree that that's a good idea. But other attitudes, are there other types of attitudes or ways of shaping people's morality that you've been exposed to outside of DEI?
Yes, I mean, as long as I've been at the U, there have been presentations and they have films and panels and that have patient perspectives, like both patients who are also employees or just patients who want to come back and talk with both positive and negative experiences. And yeah, that's my mother. Want to share their experiences as patients in the hospital in good and bad ways, like what they found, you know, to be a good part of what we collectively do and what we collectively don't do, and share that with a lot with nursing, but I think also just with mixed groups as a way of trying to push us to be better at what we do. I remember, I think it was when I hired in, which was almost 30 years ago, that there was a film that was shown, I saw more than once in mixed groups of, you know, physicians, housekeepers, like pretty much everybody, called so-and-so, some person's good death. And it was about like what it was like to be a dying patient and what factors were impactful for as a person as you're in a hospital dying, and what was, you know, really an awful way to be treated and what was a sensitive way to be treated. And that was, you know, like I say, almost 30 years ago, and that was a pretty big deal for me as a new baby nurse coming into the system, to be have that presented as a way to model ourselves.
So they did it by showing you a film, and what?
But in the context of like a discussion in a group, like small tables,
And they showed you an example, someone's story.
Mm-hmm.
So someone's story really had an impact on your perception about how you manage a dying patient.
Yeah, and there were also, though, in that same context, like there was a film, there were other patients who had been in the system, and then there was discussion. Similar to this.
Is it possible, I'm gonna ask them another part of this question. Is it possible to teach about people and emotional ideas about people in ways that aren't through stories? I mean, is it possible to just give people information about people and have it stick? Or if you're learning about people, do you have to learn about their stories? Has that changed in law enforcement? Is that a place where stories are important, or if it is, has that always been the case? I guess I'm leading because I sort of feel like of all these professions, law enforcement would be the one that would say, here's the rule book.
I think stories are important because those are real life. Those are stories of people's life as they present. But it's not all. We don't just do in stories. We do things like you said in a rule book type thing. And we teach, so implicit bias is something that we train our staff in. And that's teaching you about your own, or helping you to see what your own biases are, but then also when you're dealing with somebody else and some of their implicit biases as well. We all have them, whether they're good or bad. Biases aren't necessarily bad. Or mental health training. There are stories in the mental health training that we have, but it's also kind of a rule book on certain things and certain conditions that we'll encounter or deal with, and then how to deal with those appropriately. Procedural justice is another. That's the legitimacy of law enforcement and dealing with people and treating people with that dignity and respect. But where we get our legitimacy from in law enforcement, it's not just about the laws that we go by. So stories play a big part into what we do because those are real. But also there is a rule book that we have to follow, in our training.
I was wondering, Anna, if I could ask a question. I was wondering, as people go through these trainings, what are the activities? What are the modes of expression? What are the types of engagements that they take part in to maximize the impact of the training?
That's a good question. For us, so for like mental health training, we'll bring in mental health professionals and we co-teach. So we have somebody from our profession along with community mental health, and they'll come in and we'll teach together collaboratively. And sometimes there's like group projects, well, it's not projects, but group
cases?
Just group exercises that we'll work on together. Other times they'll bring in people with true, with community mental health, maybe somebody with a mental illness, and they'll come in and we'll discuss. And we'll go through it and get the different groups that way. Just thinking like the procedural justice, that's another thing that we train in, and sometimes it's just going through. A lot of times it's video interaction, because people learn different ways. Sometimes it's a story, and then you get into a group, and then you discuss the story together. And it's funny because you'll have 6 different groups. You'll read the same story, and same storyline, but who, what, and where may be different depending on the group, and depending on how the group is led or who is actually leading the group. And we'll intentionally plant different things in different groups just to plant the seed to see what kind of outcome we can get, and then talk about it as a group to see, okay, that makes sense. I can see it a different light because of maybe that different seed that you planted, so to speak.
Okay, I'm going to say something. I always think of like, you're talking about morality, or you're talking about doing to others, right? And I think that part of that is wrapped in racism, but also in classism, right? And I think one of the things that continues it is like, if you're getting trained and then you bring in another professional, then they're at the top class also. So you kind of get this thing that's done over. Again, even though you're not trying to, you bring them from different professions, but it's still all up here. I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. So I'll give you two examples. One, I'll say, and I thought about when you said treat others as I want to be treated. My niece said, my mom had a problem with a certain person. And she said, every time you talk to her, pretend it's your mother. And it's like instantly this person gets a different respect. But if I said that to everybody, some people have bad relationships with their mother, so that wouldn't work. Right? But for me, finding that spot in the story allows me to treat somebody like I want to be treated. But here's another example. So I don't know, you guys might not have seen it. There's an old movie called A Time to Kill. Right? And I love that movie. And Matthew McConaughey is my guy. And he's the lawyer trying to get Samuel L. Jackson off. If y'all seen it, great and so in this movie, what he does is, he don't know how to get Samuel off. He don't know what to do, right? And Samuel said, that's why I got you. Because you're going to know how to tell the white people to let you go. Right? That's just what he tells me. So Matthew McConaughey don't know how to do it, But what he does in the end, when he does his closing arguments, he describes the abuse that this little girl went through, and that they actually urinated on her as they raped her and threw cans at her, and he just described it. And of course, everybody was seeing Samuel L. Jackson's daughter. And though it hurt, and then he said, pretend she was white. And you could see them jurors, a couple of them eyes popped open, right? And I'm not bringing the color issue. What I'm bringing is sometimes what is that story that shocks us to see other people as us, right? What is it that when a policeman shows up on a scene that he can see me in my blackness as himself? What is it? What is it that when you show up to a doctor and that doctor really sees me as himself? My son was born and I never heard of this, of course, the third child. He swallowed the meconium. That's that bowel movement, and he swallows it and it tars your lungs. And you can't breathe. And we had to leave my son in the hospital. And I remember going to meet the doctor that was going to force smog into his lungs because that was going to make him grab the eye. His boy's 6'3", 240 now, right? But anyway, that moment we were scared to death, right? And I just remember meeting the doctor, and when I went to shake his hand, he was kind of like, "Oh, hold on, killer. His hands are golden. Don't just go in and grab them and squeeze them all hard and break my fingers. I got to operate on your son tomorrow." Right? And I just thought about, again, he didn't have time, doctors and nurses. He don't have time to talk to me and reassure me and be curious, right? He's got a job to do. He's letting me know, hey, there are some chances, and he's gone on. Especially a surgeon, right? And so the nurses come behind with the curiosity and the care and treating me like, and I would imagine that he loses some patience and some things. He can't get that attached. I don't want my doctor that attached. I need him to stay, right? Our police officers, we need y'all to stay on a certain, right? So all of this brings into these conversations, right? And how do we balance that, right? With our need to treat you as I see myself. And then I need to, I always say, people say, love me like you love yourself. I don't want some people to love me like they love themselves, right? Please don't.
You just put that head away, we'll be all right. You know what I mean? Put that on a chair next to you, we'll be just fine.
You a Raiders fan? Eastern guy went to the Raiders, and I'm just like, man, I can't even ask him for money, right? So yeah. So I mean, these are beautiful questions. I think make us think and challenge us in a way, right? That is really. I mean, because I think that, you know, after we get to talking, what we're talking about is how to give service,
Right.
like a service professional, right? And so when we're talking about how do we treat people in a way and in a space where really you have the power, but the person you're serving, right, needs you. And how do you balance that and make them feel human?
I was thinking also about how the people who serve us are being treated by those in command, so to speak, and how sometimes we are at the receiving end of frustrations and stresses that are passed on because maybe there is a lack of curiosity on the part of management in terms of what the employees, the so-called people on the ground, are experiencing, and not enough questions are asked, or maybe not the right questions are asked, or things are glossed over, and there's a lot of pain that builds up. And coming back to the morality question and the curiosity question and things in the work context, what I learned about teaching, I learned from my mom and my aunts in terms of how we treat people, but also other teachers in the school, like the ways that they spend time after school. I mean, using found things in a rural situation where teachers were filling their pockets on a regular basis. And you would see them in town buying the Bristol Oil and buying the Barbados, because Barbados is small. So you see all that. And I just think that saying example is better than precept. I mean, that runs deep for me because it's almost to the point that I kind of took for granted how I came to be how I was until there were certain critical moments that would take me back to those memories. I want to kind of get back to how people are being treated. My mom she would stand up for herself and she would take the principal to task, but not everybody was in a position to do that. I don't even know how she did this, but ultimately in his retirement, she would still call and find out how he was and when he was ill. But she had to tell him off on a regular basis. And she did. But that's not everybody. And the thing is, teachers and others shouldn't have to, there should be a culture that is inclusive, where voices are heard. It should be in the day-to-day, it should be in the water, but we have to get there when we're not there. And sometimes things have to become overly structured before they can become organic.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what we're trying to get to here. I mean, Corey brought this up, you guys are bringing this up, this idea of there's two things we're talking about here. One is how one of the problems in discussing this is that bringing in these target professions, these problem-prone professions of law enforcement, education, and healthcare, it is kind of confusing for people because there's, the point of looking at these professions is to find out what you all are doing in these professions that can be shared in a more, in the kind of a body of learning that can help people in all kinds of public service jobs. Alex brought it up when one of the youth data collectors, this idea of being able to take an inexpensive certification that is built on the knowledge that's already been created by your really, your professions that deal with people all the time. And one of the things that Corey was bringing up and that you're talking about, this idea, some people can take the principal to task and other people can't. And that's the reason why we need some norms built into society about how to behave towards public service workers. But just as Corey brought up, you know, he's been a public service worker, a McDonald's employee, and people bring their frustration to public service workers. So what we're trying to get to is that point of service moment. What needs to happen at that point of service moment that can be taught to everybody whose job has a huge point of service moment component? Can we take this certification and give it to social workers who have to deal with lots of people all the time? And it is like all of these jobs, all of our jobs, where it's the middle, you know, it's the middle amount of education that you need to have a middle class job. And because of that, you know, you're not in the rarefied world of you get to be a surgeon and you get to decide who you talk to, or you are the, the politician that makes policy, the city administrator that makes policy for the police department. You have to deal with everybody. And that's a stressful position. And so we want to figure out what's going on in your professions that can be part of this. Go ahead, Pete.
So, as you're talking, I realized that one of the things I've liked best about my job historically is people's ability to be surprising, like, and not live up to stereotypes. Like one of the funniest families and most surprising from what I realized was my own biases was an Amish family. Hilarious. Not anything like what you would expect, but what I expected in my own bias.
Yeah.
They were fantastic and funny and like rocked every stereotype. And you never know. You never know when people come in and they can be rich or poor or look like they have it all together or look like they have absolutely nothing together. And you never know who's going to pull it together and do a great job with this kid with cancer and who's not. And parents who are divorced, parents whose marriage looks solid, like you never know whose marriage is going to blow up, whose marriage is going to get better. You don't. Like, there's no predicting what family is going to just implode and what family is not. And when you meet as a physician, as a nurse, or anyone, when you have met a family who has just been told their kid has cancer in the first few minutes, like you are meeting people in the shittiest time of their life. Not to put too fine a point on it, but I mean, that is like, what parent is that not one of their worst nightmares, you know? Because when you have a kid, they're born fine, you know, everything's going well and you think you're good. And then all of a sudden, oh, you know, that rash or that twisted knee or whatever, yeah, that's cancer. And here, we're just going to bring you, and like with kids, it's not like with adults. Like with adults, you get a test, you get this, you get that. With kids, you go to the doctor, you go to the ER, whatever, you get it. And they bring them up on our floor so fast, they don't have time to go home and get a toothbrush. They are in the hospital right now, and you're here, you don't have a toothbrush, you don't have this thing, like, and tomorrow or maybe the next day, as soon as we can get them in the OR, we're gonna put a central line in, and then we're starting chemo right away. And I mean, it's like bam, 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 bam. And these families are stressed and they're tight, and a lot of times it's divorced parents and they're being put together. And so you have to you have to be able to walk in and you have to be able to meet this with curious. That's the only way to roll with it is, and curious in the sense of, like open to whatever, wherever they are, you have to be able to meet that and meet that, soft. If you meet people like this, it's gonna be volatile. Like, you can't take it personally. You can't, any people are gonna come at you with anger half the time. They're gonna be, because they're pissed. Their kid's got cancer. It's terrible. And then half the time the kid is, they can't eat because they may or may not go to surgery. And their emotions are all over, and you have to walk in and you have to be able to meet it soft. And if you don't know that coming into this job, you gotta learn it, or things will not go well. And so for me, that's been what I've learned from doing it.
It's interesting what you're saying there, because I feel compelled to bring in law enforcement.
Yeah,
because
I think there's a lot of
isn't that
similarity.
interesting?
I
Right,
do.
because I've heard the same thing, like this idea of like, you're meeting somebody on their very worst day. You're always meeting somebody on your very worst day. Education is a little bit different because you never know if it's their worst day or if it's their best day. They
Sometimes they're the same. But at the same time, though, as you are also, then you are walking to the very next room and somebody else just found out that their kid's in remission.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go down the hall and your other patient is, somebody else found out now their kid relapsed, so they're going through the whole thing again.
Well, it's interesting what you said about you have to meet it soft. Now, this is a big issue around policing and bad policing and frightening policing, right? Is the idea that, is it possible, I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is the aggressiveness of policing. Is that something that you guys are both involved in organizations that are being, you're kind of unique. I know that there's good work being done nationwide in policing, but you guys are part of organizations that are really intentionally trying to change the culture. Is this a big focus, coming in hard versus coming in soft? And how do you deal with it?
Yeah. So, to everyone's point here, the human endeavor is unpredictable. And I find after all of these years, the curiosity part of it is as I've gone into leadership, giving the people that are responsible to me and are responsible to my communities the freedom to be compassionate, to come up with solutions that may not necessarily be in the rule book, covered in policy, something you're going to get evaluated on, but having that empathy and compassion for the human endeavor that has rewards and can be very tragic. And I'll speak for Keith when I say this. We deal in the tragic side more than we deal in the reward side. And in time, it chips away at our very core disposition because we don't always get the reward. We get the hardship time and time again. But in the leadership role that I have, it is allowing staff to be empathetic, to treat people how you would want to be treated in their worst possible moments in life. And even in doing that, if it doesn't fit tightly within a rule or regulation, if we're doing it for those reasons, I've always created that treat people how you would want to be treated yourself in situations and circumstances that are less than ideal. And for every situation where we've had a positive, good outcome reward that intrinsically makes us feel good, we've got hundreds of others that it is very difficult to manage over the course of 29 or 30 years. So that staff involvement for me and that freedom is very important to me. It was in Ann Arbor and it certainly is in the EMU. So I get what you're saying. And every call we go on is different, and you don't know what the next call is gonna bring. And it's hard to keep up with that, but we have an obligation to make sure our staff is involved, we're transparent, we're engaged, our expectations are communicated, so that they have the freedom to treat people how you would want to be treated within that guide of morality.
I was wondering if I could ask a follow-up. And Corey mentioned it too, recognizing that police officers go through trauma as well. Because oftentimes we think only about the citizen, the average citizen. But I was just wondering, in terms of caring internally within the department for those who are traumatized, what's the process like? And has that changed over time so that that individual can go back out in some sense, maybe restored?
Yeah. So I think law enforcement has gone a long way recognizing the mental health issues that law enforcement faces. And there's a model, it's a 21st century policing model that Barack Obama instituted when he was president. And one of the pillars in his model was recognizing the need to ensure that mental health first responders have adequate resources to manage the stress that comes with the job. So when I started, we didn't have that, but we do now. And it's incumbent upon Commander Flores and I to make sure we've got mechanisms in place to recognize when we've had a staff that's gone through a traumatic event or a series of traumatic events, to make sure we're offering and promoting resources so that their mental health is intact. Because if we lose our front line because we're not in a position to recognize the value of this, our job becomes significantly harder than ours.
And we haven't always done the best at that. In our profession, we haven't been the best at that. And I would still say we're too far behind even still. We're working on it, but we're nowhere near where we should be. For what we do, because we don't get called to the barbecue. Hey, come over, we're having a barbecue. Why don't you come over and have,
the birthday parties. No.
Yeah, we don't get called for that. You don't get the calls of, my child is in remission. For the most part, it's a negative to negative to negative, and it's a constant every day. It's a challenge. It truly is.
And what does it kind of signal to you that might be needed in terms of community policing so that there is that, or a set of moments that offer that soft touch between yourself and community?
Well, I can tell you internally, we don't shy away from this issue, and we encourage everyone in the organization to step up, step in if you see one of your coworkers beginning to spiral. I think for early in my career, no one ever did that because that was an expectation that we didn't suffer either. Now I think we are doing a better job of making a standard part of our routine that it's okay to say. And there are mechanisms in place through Washington County, through the CAPS program and EMU, to where it's our responsibility to monitor this. And it's our responsibility when we have tragic events that affect our staff to be able to say to the detective who just went through, you're taking the next couple of days off and I'm taking you to see someone because I think you need to talk to somebody. And we've had to do that too.
And it's okay.
Yes.
Because there's been a stigma for the years that it's not okay, right? Because we're strong, we're alpha, we just don't do that.
Right.
But now it's okay. It's okay for any one of us to be in that situation and for us to get the help that we need. And it's interesting because we just had all of our staff go through active bystander for law enforcement. And essentially it's just that. It's that stepping in when maybe somebody's spiraling, maybe it's not when they're spiraling, but it's before. You start to see some of those warning signs that are coming on. And I will say that, what we're talking about, our profession isn't for everybody. And I think we do a pretty good job of kind of weeding through, through our hiring process, through our interviews, up and through our psychological and medical, and then our training process to get the right person in the job, that are in it for the right reasons. So I can say our profession as a whole, especially now, has done a pretty good job of getting the right people in there.
And what are we doing about getting folks to barbecues? I was thinking about community policing aspect of this, because you said you don't get invited to barbecues, so there's not that balance. So I'm just wondering about, I know some places, I remember this woman, a neighbor of mine, I think she was in the DC area or Maryland before, and she talked about working with a community policing program, and then the funding was all cut back. And she said that program had worked so beautifully, and it was so sad to see something that was actually working cut back. So I was just wondering about the experience of creating that shared sense of humanity and bringing the moments to exercise softness with community, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think it's there. I mean, EMU has a community engagement program, and so do we. You know, so I say that in jest that we don't get called, we truly don't get called, dispatch doesn't get a call to send the officers or the deputies to someone's house for a barbecue.
Right.
Unless
there's a fight.
We used to, yeah. They call us when there's a fight.
Right.
Right. Well, it's interesting, when I started this journey, it was in Ypsilanti, and it was in 1993, and it was more common for a uniformed police officer to do a drive through a neighborhood to get flagged down because they're having a gathering or a family reunion and come grab a plate. And there was that sense that there was formal and informal just commitment to the community. Yes, it went both ways. And you could sit down and have a conversation and enjoy the meal, appreciate the gratitude, be humbled by the fact that you were even asked. But now in 3 decades, we've lost some of that. So getting us to that point, I think is a commitment, you know, from both sides of the fence.
Sure.
And we're gonna try. You know, we're gonna try. What the answer to that is the $1 million question, and if I have it, I'll call you.
So hopefully we will all stay in touch and try to work through this, you know?
No, I do think it's smaller. You know, I mean, like more localized, being more local, more familiarity, like keeping people so they're familiar faces.
Yeah.
Like I think nurses benefit from the public perception in a couple of ways. In that, like, for one, I think we're sort of seen as the buffer between the doctors who are sometimes the bad guys. And also we are more hands-on. So but the other thing is honestly, because nurses do get assaulted a lot. It's a big danger for less kids, although we do get bitten. But really, there is a pretty significant level of assault in nursing, but we're not armed, you know. So there's not really any possibility of us sort of being, hardly any possibility except those rogue ones that inject people in the night. But it almost never is the other way around, you know? I mean, so we can be as edgy and as like, we can feel as threatened as some police can, but we don't have any way of like acting that way. Do you know what I mean? Not really at all in my part, but some nurses, and depending on where they work and what profession or what specialty they're in. And I do think that's a big difference. I think once you put a gun in somebody's hand, not that I would take them away, but I mean, I do think it escalates it for both parties. I think that for the person who has the gun, you're more inclined to use it if you have it. But also I think the other people, if they see someone has a gun, that ramps up everybody's adrenaline. And especially if it's somebody they don't know, and especially if there's a uniform, and especially with everything that's on the news associating uniform, gun, dead. Like, I think all of those things, but then if you can put a familiar face on it, it just takes the level down.
Softness, as you said before.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I wanted to speak to that healthcare part, and I'm not a nurse. I've worked at UM for a while, but there is a certain amount, like if depending on the nurse, depending on the patient, if there's like a certain attitude, I can totally see like someone being maybe not negligent, but not as hands-on, or maybe not as diligent. Yeah, maybe it's not diligent, or if you are so like you have a certain number of patients, and it's the last place you want to go, one room, not that you wouldn't go, but I mean, there certainly is a danger in a hospital if someone doesn't have family members or visitors coming in.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I've always been really like, if somebody's in the hospital or when I worked in the hospital and I knew that they didn't have somebody, I always make the gesture of stopping by that room and making sure that the staff around them knew that somebody was stopping by, and just to be, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
there's still dangers.
oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, and it's.
Let me ask a question. I'm really enjoying hearing people discuss these ideas. I think this is really great. I got a couple more questions I want to ask before you leave here today. Do you think there's a public service profession in general that does a good job training for understanding and appreciating difference?
Hospital chaplain.
What's that?
Hospital chaplain.
Hospital chaplain? Okay.
Because they have to be they have to by intention, they have to be able to talk to different. Thank you.
And this is interesting to me because as a social worker, I was taught all of those curiosity, compassion, all of those things. Then I worked in incarceration. Right there. Because you have management running the facility. They don't want you to meet anybody with softness in an incarceration setting. But as a social worker, that's my business to be curious. That's my job. That's why I was a social worker. And so I'm curious as to how you meet that in all of your professions, when quite often, you're probably the exception, sir, quite often those are in upper management, in management positions, do not have the experience or the knowledge, or frankly, the wherewithal to do what you do, Pam, to do what you do. How do you get rid of, I guess maybe are they implicit biases at this point? Are we going all the way back to the biases? Because management often doesn't know what folks are doing.
Yeah.
So they're going to tell me.
They have no idea.
They're going to tell me that I can't meet with softness. I can't meet with kindness. And they don't want to talk about all these feeling things, And actually in court, that you do have to rely on that burden of proof and everything. You have to go in with facts. You can't talk about how somebody felt. It's kind of one of the reasons, frankly, that I am not in that field anymore.
I think in nursing, they want you to be kind and soft. They just want you to do it much faster.
Yeah, I like the speed of light, I know.
Much faster and more efficiently.
And in education, they want all the softness, but they also want all the tests.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Same,
Yeah.
Similar. So yeah, because nurses and teachers are supposed to be kind and soft and loving and efficient right now, damn it.
And one of the kids, I remember him very clearly telling me that he liked me because I treated him like a regular person. This is one of the inmates. And I said, okay, thank you, but I didn't really know what that meant. What is treating somebody like a regular person?
That is an excellent segue into my last question for the evening. What are the most important common training features across your professions, public-facing professions? What do you think there are across your professions that are shared ideas in training?
Recognizing bias. and being neutral in your approach to how it is you provide your service, regardless of implicit or unconscious bias. I think that's an important thing for all of us. And we constantly work and endeavor to recognize and identify and police in a neutral, blind, fair, and impartial manner, because that's exactly what we're supposed to do. And it sometimes can be a challenge, but that is what that's what our code of ethics tells us we should do. So that bias awareness training, I think, is very important for all of us.
I want to answer two questions. Go back to the last question. The professions that they do a good job training. I believe our profession does. I believe the law enforcement profession truly does. And it segues into this question that you just asked, but the bias training is one piece. I think, you talk about de-escalation, because we talk about de-escalation. And we send all of our staff through de-escalation. We already talked about the ABLE, the active bystander, to take care of the internal, so us internally. But then also the procedural justice, which if people don't know procedural justice, that's truly where we get our legitimacy from the community. It's not necessarily just from the laws, but a piece that's taught of procedural justice is the LEAD model. It's LEED. And it's the listen, the explain, the equity, and then the dignity. And that's how we treat, the community or the citizens that we come in contact with. And that truly promotes trust. And it shows that we value, people by listening first and then taking the time to explain. And that's a big piece of procedural justice, and then the mental health training that we talked about, and teaching our staff about mental health, because not a lot of our staff coming into it know exactly what that is. They learn it firsthand, but they don't really know what it is. So teaching them, what that is. So I think those are a couple of the things that we do in our profession. And I think we do really well, at least today.
Yeah, there's, in learning about all of these professions, mine is education, but, when we talk about procedural justice or de-escalation, this is something that we do in education all the time, especially if you teach in public high school, kids that are on the verge of adulthood. Middle school people talk about this all the time, being able to,
De-escalation, I can't say the word right now.
I just messed you up, I'm sorry.
Escalation in elementary school, absolutely.
It makes all the difference. Every time you're talking about dealing with people, you are talking about all these things. De-escalation, running into somebody. Procedural justice is all about a list of behaviors that you have to do so that things just start off okay. It's the same thing walking into a classroom and asking everyone how they're doing, finding out what's happening in the environment and being able to bring people into, what it is you have to do today. Today, I'm the teacher, I have to teach you something. I'm the police officer, I have to get order here. I am your nurse, and you have all these miserable things that you're gonna have to do. I'm sorry, but here we go, right? It's kind of, there's a lot, and that's why these are the target professions, because if this giant component of your job is giving service to people, you have to find out where they're at first. You have to meet them with a curious mind, and you have to treat them, bring them up to something that is going to give you the best idea of where they're actually at and what they actually need. I see so many common features across these professions.
Can I say this?
Yes.
Yeah, especially y'all hit that de-escalation. I was a young man, I just left a little while. I was mentoring him, and he had some real anger issues and problems. And I watched, and again, I say color not because the color matters, just because I say that because we were looking at things from these two different perspectives, right? Me being a black man, how I raised my kids, and the young man being a black man, and this being a white teacher. And the boy did something that, to be honest, if he was my son, I'd have snatched him up Right, and that's how I would have handled that, and I watched this teacher do something so totally different than what I would have done. And I remember, a couple of days passed, and I asked him, I said, man, I was really impressed by how you handled that. And I said, where did you learn that? He don't even have kids, right? And he said, de-escalation training. And I thought, well, I'm the one with 5 kids. So I have de-escalation training, right? And so what I was sitting here thinking was, is another thing my coach says to me is, remember, do things with people, not to people. Right?
Yes.
And so as I'm sitting here listening to that, I'm thinking about how across the professions, we'll talk about de-escalation and these different types of things, but yet the people that you're going to come in contact with, again, have no training. Right? So they don't know anything about this.
They don't know their way.
Right, they don't know their plan, right? And so how do we, if we're going to think about how to serve the community, how do we get back into it? I used to live in San Diego. I used to work at La Jolla High School. And we were talking about, I was going to say that, you brought up the picnics. They would have for their teachers this candlelight breakfast once a year. It was just so amazing, right? The way they, these $1 million homes, right?
Of course they would.
Right. And so, but then I asked my kids at Dempsey Middle in December, I said, let's have a luncheon for the teachers. Who do you want to invite? It was like, no, nobody. None of them care for us. None of them love us. Right. So again, this whole, we talk about like how to solve it, but it's not a one-sided issue.
But I would challenge and say, how do they know? How do they know that they don't love us? Is that a misrepresentation?
I could give some examples of what I've seen, and it's and being in a classroom with kids for just a quarter. And I ain't condoning, I ain't judging. I'm just saying I could see how some teachers could lose their zeal. You see what I'm saying? Let's be real, right? And again, I go back to the answer ain't in that the teacher just gotta do better. The answer is we gotta connect with the parents, the people that we serve, and help them see. Also, it's not an either or. We need it all. And so when you talk about these kind of trainings, and I think it's how do we bring the community on board too? And then we have more police at the picnic. And we wouldn't have such every time we got together. We would already know each other. We would see each other from the same lens because we all kind of have the same training. And that's why I keep talking about class. Because the higher you get up in education, you get privy to these things. And the poor slob down here with 8 kids never gets privy to it, and they can't.
Well, we need to have more One Love symposiums where we bring people together to have conversations.
Yes.
Perspectives are so important.
Yeah.
And they really are. And just, being here tonight and hear your perspective and some of the questions, these are the things that ground us as we make management decisions, we make leadership decisions, we make decisions on how we're going to deploy our staff, what programs we're going to promote, just continue and evaluate. It's that level of engagement that I know Commander Flores and I, we're never going to lose sight on. So the more conversations we can have in communities with honest dialogue, even when it's difficult and not easy, I think it promotes growth. And I'll tell you, I think in law enforcement, we need it right now. And let's go for it. Let's give it a shot. And let's do this.
There's something about that aspect of having leaders that create a culture of valuing growth, stretching of self, and embracing the discomfort. It's like the whole aesthetic that you love yourself too enough to want to be better at a job that you're spending your whole life doing. And I was thinking about that, just how like it really, I don't want to get all the way up here, but that sense of beauty that you feel, like Christy, when she was doing the work with the kids, that alignment, that beautiful aesthetic, the relationship among the kids and Christy with the kids. I mean, that is, I mean, I could go home feeling like I got $1 billion, but not quite. Not quite, but you know, you feel that in the spirit, at the spirit level, like that is just beautiful. And she could feel, I mean, I know in teaching, there's a lot of stress, there are a lot of issues, and Christy raised some of them, like the demands to get these scores out and so on. When you want to foster mastery, you want to lift up the kids from where they are, have them
teaching 10 half-hour classes a day, where you have 25 different kids in the class every half hour. How do I foster relationships with kids who, and I should be the person to do that because I am the artist who can bring them something that they're struggling with. You know, how do I get to do that when I have no time to have a conversation with a kid who's struggling?
And I'll say the way you get to do that, again, for me, I grew up and my mother often appeared at the school with these peanut butter cookies.
It's all about the cookies.
And I was a grown man before I realized that's how she checked on me. Like peanut butter cookies was the way in. Because, you know, and you get parents. Because I think about this now too. If I had 4 of those parents that came and sat in that classroom, there are 10 of those boys that wouldn't act like that. Right? But they parents don't know they act like that. And if you say something, they parents get mad at me. Right? You see, so we know the problem. See, you as a white woman, you can't say that in a black community. Right? And that's why we gotta have real conversation. Right? We gotta sit down and start talking about it. We want to be better. It requires growth on all parts. Right?
And just participating in this gave me the opportunity to engage some kids of color that I would not normally get to do that with. And because I am asking of them, I'm begging of them to give me their time and their efforts and their talent and their courage. You know, I'm begging them, and they're in a position of power because they're giving it to me. And that was a really beautiful equalizer in this process.
I think humor goes a long way too. I really do. And just being able to just loosen up and just bullshit with people and when you can go into a situation and just kind of just find your ability to just kind of, like my dad is still, but except he's locked in the house, he doesn't see anyone. But like I've watched him do this my whole life. He's in any social situation, he's like ping, like, where can we connect? How can we connect? And he'll just like toss stuff out. Oh, sports? No. This. Oh no, this. Ping, ping, and then you're off. So any situation, any person, he could find something in common, and he just like toss them out like bullshit. Oh, there it is. And
can we move that?
No, but some people are just. Like, and you have to be able to get loose, and you have to be like a little bit funny, or a little bit of a smart ass. And
the tools of being soft.
And also
politically
tools to
correct
be able to
now.
smile.
Yeah, we got so much political correctness. We don't know how to have. I'm telling you this. I was working in a guy called. I'm working at AT&T. And the guy calls on the phone, and I help him with his stuff and goes on. And at the end of the phone call, he's an older white gentleman, and he says, "You're one of them black fellas, aren't you?" I said, "Well, yes, sir. Yes, I am." He says, "Man, I've been meaning to ask." I said, "What is that, sir?" He said, "What do y'all like to be called now?" I said, "Sir, nobody checked with me." I don't know. I'm called black. He said, yeah, because they used to call you Negro. Then they called you. Now, some people say that's offensive. No, to me, there was a man who didn't get to meet black people. He finally got one on the phone. Curiosity. And he wasn't mean. He wasn't trying to be nasty. He just wondered. He wondered, and he found somebody to have. And we done got to the point, we can't ask nobody nothing.
Right? Yeah.
Right? They had that thing, in the paper. I'm in several groups, and the two white girls was touching the black girl's skirt. And I guess that's a no-no. But I remember I asked a black dude to touch his dreads, and he went off on me. I didn't know. So I get it if white people don't know. Well, you might not know. Right? And tell them. Don't touch my hair. You don't do that. If that's what you want, right? It don't have to be a national incident. It's just humans wondering.
Kids will often say to grown-ups, how old are you? And grown-ups get offended, but if you say to the kids, it's in a teachable moment, that you don't have to be angry, you don't have to feel disrespected.
I tell them I'm 100.
Yeah. I told my kids I'm 102. I had a birthday at school and I told them I was 102 later. They said, no, you had a birthday, you're 103. But to have it as a teachable moment instead of being angry. That's improvement.
You can touch my hair, I won't be offended.
Okay.
I have to say another thing too, is the awareness of pronoun choice this is giving us all an opportunity to be relieved because we can normalize and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and that means somebody who's you're not sure about, they feel comfortable to share what pronouns they use. It just can become a better norm so that everybody feels more comfortable.
Yeah. It made me think, Christine, even ways of learning, being able to share ways of learning in the classroom.
Yeah.
I learn best when such and such, the visuals are in place here. And when people start sharing that, then the other students could try on these other ways of learning.
Yeah.
And this,
to learn for themselves. How can they do that?
Yeah, so it's the term neurodiversity is relatively new to me, but I find it really beautiful. I was like, yes, that makes sense. And another thing I just want to quickly mention about, issues of discipline. Those crazy, intense conferences that you go to. I went to AERA 1 year, scampering around to these various sessions, very intense. But one that I'll never forget is one in which, and I'm trying to remember if it was both social work and education and how the team was configured, but they got women from the community to come in as teachers' aides. And what they would do, because they knew what the traumas were in the community, and when they would spot certain behaviors, they would do the little come aside and chat. And quick, as we say in Barbados, quick so. But this was here in the US, the child was able to be back in seat and learning so that, distancing and have you suspended for 3 days and so on was out the door because these women knew about what was happening in the neighborhood that was causing some of these reactions, and they were able to see it and really quickly come in and have that conversation again with the soft touch. I think modulation of voice, all of those things, really important. And again, it kind of speaks to the impact of music as well. I think in how we pace, how we modulate, all of that.
This has been great, like way better than I thought. There's so many things happened in this, prior to this, I couldn't even believe that I mean, I'll spare you, but let me just say, this was great. This was really fantastic. I really learned so much from this conversation. My sort of takeaway, openness, curiosity, stories, time, being able to, these are the big concepts that I'm walking away from as my youth data collectors and myself begin to shape this human services professional course. As it gets better fleshed out, we'll let you guys know, and hopefully maybe you'll be able to send some people in your groups to come and check it out. If you are a member of it, the